eyes emerged as if stepping out of a dream. Draped in a pristine white silk gown by Ralph Lauren, each stride she took seemed to glide over water. The audience held its breath. Photographers scrambled to capture her from every angle. The entire room fell under a spell. Yet behind that flawless elegance lay another story, one few had ever heard. Saffron was not the kind of model chosen at first sight. She didn't grow up under the city lights, or in the embrace of a wealthy family ready to roll out a red carpet. Her path to the fashion world was a series of uncertain steps, where beauty was not just a gift, but a burden. In those early castings, she was turned down for being too gentle, in a decade that celebrated rebellion and sharp-edged charisma. And yet, that very difference made her the rare gem Ralph Lauren had been searching for. From classic, timeless ad campaigns to graceful runway moments, she became the eternal muse. Today, we revisit her journey, from an ordinary English girl to a face that defined elegance, and the moments when the lights began to fade, revealing her own chapter in the dark side of fashion and the untold struggles behind the glamour of the 90-second Supermodels. Saffron Aldridge was born in 1968 London, into a family connected to the arts, but far from the glamorous lifestyle people might imagine. Her father, Alan Aldridge, was a celebrated illustrator who had worked with the Beatles and Elton John. Her mother was a former model who had left the runway to raise her children. Saffron's childhood unfolded between the vibrant, colorful world of her father's art and the quiet, grounded atmosphere her mother worked hard to maintain. She grew up in an old house in Notting Hill, long before the neighborhood became a fashionable address for the wealthy. Back then, the streets were dusty, lined with second-hand bookshops, family-run cafes, and walls covered in graffiti. Saffron was a quiet child, an observer by nature, her dark brown eyes always seeming to hold more than words could express. Despite her father's artistic fame, the family was far from wealthy. Alan's work kept him away from home for long stretches, leaving Saffron with her mother and siblings. This complex family dynamic taught her independence early on. Long afternoons were often spent reading, sketching, and trying on her mother's old clothes, turning the living room into her private runway. From a young age, Saffron knew she was different. While other girls in her class dreamed of becoming teachers or nurses, she was drawn to fashion not just for beautiful clothes, but for the strange power of transformation, of becoming someone else entirely for a moment. Still, the outside world wasn't always kind. As the daughter of a famous artist, she faced scrutiny and constant comparisons. Some assumed she could take shortcuts because of her father's name, though in reality, the fashion industry in the 1982nd and 92nd remained brutally competitive. During her teenage years, she shot up in height, her slender frame and refined features setting her apart. Yet it was her mother who hesitated most at the idea of her daughter becoming a model. Having once lived through the harsh realities of the industry herself, she wanted to protect Saffron from the pressures she had endured. But destiny had its own plans. At family gatherings and art world soirees, someone would always whisper, "She was born for the camera." Those words, repeated over the years, planted a seed, one that would later grow into the dream that would carry Saffron into the rarefied world of the 90-second Supermodels, and eventually into her own encounter with the dark side of fashion. Opportunity came to Saffron on a day no one expected. It was the summer she turned 18, and London was bathed in sunlight. Notting Hill still had its bohemian charm then. Saffron was helping a friend of her mother's at an art exhibition, wearing an old maxi dress, her hair loosely tied back, no makeup. Amid the crowded room, filled with paintings and the low hum of conversation, a tall, lean man in a long coat approached, his eyes fixed on her. He was a well-known fashion photographer in London's creative circles. After a brief exchange, he handed her his card and said simply, "You should try a photo shoot. There's something very different about you." The words echoed in her mind for weeks. At first, she hesitated. Her mother was worried about the cutthroat nature of the industry. Her father, however, encouraged her. "If you have a chance, don't let fear hold you back. Torn between these two perspectives, Saffron decided to give it a try, not because she believed she would succeed, but because she didn't want to miss something that could change her life. Her first shoot took place in a small East London studio. The photographer told her to stand still, look into the lens, and think of the thing that makes you saddest. The result was striking. Her deep eyes seemed to hold an untold story, her face delicate yet quietly warm. The images were sent to several agencies, and within weeks, a major London modeling agency invited her in. But the path was not lined with roses. At her very first casting, a director glanced at her and said, "Too classic. The market wants something edgier now." Saffron left with her heart heavy, but she didn't quit. She took on work as a fit model, posing for small brands' lookbooks, learning the mechanics of the industry from the inside. The turning point came when she was selected as a fitting model for a Ralph Lauren runway show in London. The American designer, known for his timeless, preppy style, was instantly captivated by her elegance and natural poise. He invited Saffron to front his next global campaign, and in that moment, her life entered a new chapter. Saffron wasn't discovered in a mall or on a beach, as so many 90-second supermodels were in popular lore. Her journey began at an art exhibition, with a glance through a crowded room, a beginning that would eventually lead her to the heights of fashion, and, later, to brush against the dark side of fashion. In her early days on the international fashion stage, Saffron Aldridge seemed to step into an entirely new universe, one where every move on the runway was a moment to define herself. In that universe, Ralph Lauren became her guiding star. He didn't just see her as a face for his brand, he transformed her into the embodiment of its elegance, purity, and timeless beauty. Ralph Lauren campaigns featuring Saffron evoked a dreamlike world. Endless meadows, wooden houses by the lake, outdoor tea parties bathed in sunlight. Saffron, in a flowing silk dress, chestnut hair loose around her shoulders, her smile a fleeting whisper of summer wind, became the story the brand wanted to tell. Those images graced the covers of Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and Elle not only in the UK but across the globe. On the runway, she was different, her gaze sharpened, her stride confident, never hurried yet never hesitant. Paris, Milan, New York, each week brought a new city, a new backstage, the clamor of makeup artists and stylists, the quickened heartbeat before the curtain lifted. Beyond Ralph Lauren, she worked for fashion powerhouses like Valentino, Chanel, and Calvin Klein. Photographers such as Mario Testino and Patrick Demarchelier adored the way she could speak with her eyes. No elaborate poses needed, just one look that told an entire story. Unlike some of the other 90-second supermodels whose careers were punctuated by tabloid drama, Saffron kept her private life guarded, appearing in the media only when necessary. Paradoxically, this air of mystery made her even more captivating an enigma in an era when models were often defined by public scandal. Her peak wasn't just about brand prestige, it was also about peer recognition. Backstage at Chanel's spring show in Paris, Claudia Schiffer once whispered, "She looks like she's stepped out of a classical painting, but she's living in the modern world." That remark spread quickly through the fashion community, reinforcing Saffron's status as a symbol of grace. The 1,992nd were her golden era. Her schedule was packed, her campaigns succeeded one after another, and her name was among the most valuable in England's modeling scene. Yet behind the scenes, she felt the strain, constant travel, the pressure to maintain her image, and the creeping sense that she was living more for others than for herself. Still, at that moment, in every cover, every catwalk, Saffron Aldridge was the very definition of elegance, unaware that even at the height of the spotlight, the first shadows of the dark side of fashion were beginning to stretch toward her world. In a fashion world obsessed with constant reinvention, what keeps a model at the top isn't just a beautiful face or a perfect walk, it's the ability to shape herself into a brand of her own. Saffron Aldridge understood this from the very beginning. Her greatest distinction lay in her unwavering commitment to elegance and modesty. Even when the mid-90-second trends tilted toward rebellion, grunge, and overt sensuality. Brands and magazines often suggested she experiment with more provocative shoots, but Saffron always declined politely. She didn't judge or look down on that style, she simply knew it wasn't who she was. Once, during a major shoot for a prestigious New York fashion magazine, the editor suggested she pose topless to reinvent her image. Saffron smiled and replied, "If people remember me for keeping my clothes on, that would be far better." The room fell silent, and in the end, the shoot went ahead in her own style, sophisticated, classic, full of quiet strength. But standing firm wasn't always rewarded. There was a time when she was labeled too safe and out of step with the times. A few brands dropped her in favor of fresher, edgier faces. Still, she never wavered. "I'd rather lose a contract than lose myself," she once said in a rare interview. Outside of fashion, Saffron devoted time to charity work, becoming an ambassador for organizations supporting children and women in need. She didn't flaunt her involvement. Instead, she quietly channeled her modeling earnings into these causes. This further set her apart from some of her 90s Supermodels peers, whose fame often revolved around excess and spectacle. In an industry where a model's career can be fleeting, Saffron extended her time at the top by becoming a symbol of endurance. Brands sought her not just to sell clothes, but to align themselves with a set of values, refinement, authenticity, and integrity. Her difference wasn't about shocking the media. It was about choosing the harder path, saying no when it might cost her opportunities, but keeping her identity intact. This resolve etched her name deeper into the memory of the fashion world, proof that even in the glittering chaos, one could resist being swallowed by the dark side of fashion. By the late 1992, as fashion entered a period of seismic change, with a new wave of models younger, edgier, and more willing to sell their personal lives than the clothes, Saffron Aldridge began to feel the pressure. She remained a favorite for certain brands, but her calendar was no longer as full as before. Casting rooms now brimmed with fresh faces eager to trade mystery for headlines. The real shift came when a tabloid ran a story claiming Saffron had retired due to age and an inability to keep up with the new sexy trends. The article featured an unflattering candid photo from a charity event where she wore a simple outfit and no makeup. To the public, it looked like she had left the industry for good. The rumor spread quickly, and the job offers dwindled. In truth, Saffron was enduring the most difficult chapter of her life. A close family member had fallen seriously ill, forcing her to spend most of her time in London as a caregiver. Life became a routine of hospital visits, doctor's appointments, and financial strain. Fashion, with its constant travel and grueling schedules, was no longer an option. She attempted a return in the early 2000s, booking a few small campaigns and brief magazine features, but the industry had changed. New faces dominated the runways, and social media was beginning to define stardom rather than the iconic campaigns that had once made the 90s Supermodels household names. With her discreet lifestyle and reluctance to play the publicity game, Saffron seemed out of place in this new order. Some peers believed she disappeared by choice. She refused long-term PR contracts, avoided red carpet appearances, and chose a quieter life. But behind that choice was another truth, one she never publicly spoke about. The pressure to maintain her image, the feeling of being replaced, and the grief of her family crisis pushed her into a quiet, lingering depression. Friends noticed she spoke less, rarely attending gatherings. There was no dramatic scandal, no public meltdown, just a slow sunset. One day, people simply realized she was no longer on magazine covers or in major campaigns. And so, in the eyes of the industry, she had stepped behind the curtain, into the shadows where the dark side of fashion often claims its most graceful souls. Today, if you search for Saffron Aldridge, most of what you'll find are images from the 1992 elegant black and white portraits, timeless Ralph Lauren campaigns, and runway moments bathed in perfect light. In recent years, however, news about her has all but vanished. Saffron chose a quiet life in the English countryside, dedicating her time to family and charity work. She never sought to reclaim the spotlight, never joined reality television, and never used social media to reignite her fame. Some call it a waste. To Saffron, it was liberation. Her legacy is not just in the iconic photographs she left behind, but in the message her career embodies. It is possible to survive and shine in one of the world's most ruthless industries without losing yourself. She proved that elegance never goes out of style and that sometimes stepping away from the lights is the only way to preserve it. For those who followed the 90-second Supermodels era, she remains a reminder of a time when mystery was still part of beauty. And for those who understand the dark side of fashion, her story stands as a quiet warning about how quickly an industry can forget those who choose a different path. Perhaps Saffron Aldridge hasn't been forgotten at all. Perhaps we've simply stopped remembering those who chose to slow down while the rest of the world kept running.